And welcome back. And of course, a big thanks to all of our sponsors, to all of our viewers, and to everybody out there who's been engaging with us all day here on the second day of the Big Five Digital Conference. Of course, we have everybody here. We're looking at what we're doing here. It's digital, it's technology, and I want to thank Autodesk for their sponsorship, particularly for this stream too, the Digital and Smart Talk series. So thank you so much for being with us at this digital festival. It's great to have everybody on board. And indeed, thanks to our audience. You've been really great and you're getting some questions in there. We still have one great panel to go. So when we talk about technology and digital, and we're hearing this in every session, this is really the way of the future in terms of how it will change the industry, how it will change our working lives, how it will change everything we do, in fact. But now this session particularly is going to take a look at intelligent buildings. So intelligent buildings and the impact for the future. I'm very, very excited to be listening to this. And we have two great panel members. So I'm equally as excited to hear what they're going to say. The Associate Director of IoT for the Red Sea Development Company, Simon Timmis, joins us, and the Head of Sustainability Operations from Expo 2020, Dina, Mustafa, joins us. And this session is going to be moderated as well by the Associate Director of BuroHappold Engineering. I'm delighted to welcome now and hand this session over to him, Pedro Cadima. Over to you, Pedro.
Hi, Adna. So we're here to discuss intelligent buildings, a very interesting topic, and it's obviously generates a lot of conversation and a lot of information because it's fairly, not necessarily new, but very exciting in the world of the building environment. As we travel toward a digitized world, I think banking went through the transformation, music certainly went through the transformation. There's a lot of energy to think how the future of the building environment will look like, and how the intelligent buildings could help us to have a different, to experience life slightly different. And this gives us an opportunity to reimagine the way we use and operate buildings, from energy savings to enhanced user experiences, and also looking at our existing assets and thinking what this new technology could bring to revitalize or to improve the usage of those assets. So it is a new world of opportunities. Thank you very much for attending, Dina and Simon. Obviously, your projects are key to the region and are very, very important, and a lot of people will be looking into them to make decisions about the directions they're going to take on their own developments. So very, very useful to have you, and very hopeful and keen to listen to what you have to say about intelligent buildings. So my first question to Dina, obviously being involved in Expo 2020 is a fantastic feat. What, in your view, what makes a building truly intelligent? What's the biggest potential for humans and human well-being?
I think what makes a building truly intelligent is to understand that the building has to resonate with the inhabitants of the people who are living in it. It's not just about having technology and the bells and whistles, but the actual building design, the actual building infrastructure, the way even the building is oriented, the way the sun moves into through the windows. To me, that makes an intelligent building. An intelligent building is thought of from the beginning, from the conceptual design all the way through to the way that we have the metering and the monitoring and so on and so forth. The data is an added layer to the intelligence of the building, in my point of view.
Understood. And in your project in Expo, is there any remarkable points of truly intelligent buildings and truly intelligent spaces that you would like to...
Absolutely. From the sustainability pavilion, which is it's a remarkable, not just a remarkable design by Grimshaw architects, but also it's a truly intelligent building that generates its own water, generates its own energy, but also measures the well-being of the inhabitants that are living in or that are moving through there. So that in itself is one of the examples, but we have 120 buildings that are permanent buildings on site that are LEED certified, and that also have the capabilities and the integration of technology to make them truly smart and intelligent buildings. And the way that they're designed and the way that they're oriented, the walkability spaces between those buildings creates that truly intelligent community, both during the Expo but post-Expo for District 2020.
Understood. So thank you very much. Not to Simon and to the Red Sea development. Simon, in our conversation, we've talked about this concept of IBMS, and you explained it to me how important it is to the project. Can you share that to the group? What makes IBMS so important, and what do you expect to gain out of it?
Well, in the Red Sea, we have a vast area. So for our area, with the size of Belgium, we have a huge archipelago on one side with some of the world's best coral reefs. We have a massive section of land on the other side with dormant volcanoes. Our assets are hotels, and our other assets are spread out: airport, hotels, support buildings. We even have a coastal village where we support, where the staff live, which we're building now. So IBMS is pretty important to us because we have obviously a vast area with quite significant assets. If there's anything that goes wrong, a pump that goes wrong, some air conditioning that goes wrong, obviously we have to get there relatively quickly, particularly if it's on the island resorts. So monitoring our buildings consistently so we can effectively get to them and maintain them extremely quickly is important to us. But also, much like the Expo with the sustainability building, we are producing our own power, we're producing our own water. We don't rely on the grid or the water supply of Saudi Arabia. So balancing our utilities is also very important to us, and we can do that through IBMS.
So that's a very interesting point you raised, and it was quite interesting to me. First of all, the scale of the project. I think giving the example of Belgium is brilliant because it does the Red Sea development. We all know it's big, but it's how big it is. It brings it a lot into scale. Why are you off grid? I know it's a bit of a weird question, but it's obviously a risk. I'm guessing, was that a decision? Was that cost-wise? What was the thought process behind it?
So the DNA of the Red Sea project is to not just maintain the environment that we took, but to better the environment. And we've made those agreements with actually international bodies. Part of actually what we have outside of IBMS is a vast array of sensors, both in the water and on the land, checking to see that we are actually maintaining the health of the coral reefs, but also improving the health of the coral reefs, as we have some of the best coral reefs outside of Australia, maintaining our flora, fauna, maintaining our wildlife. So to do that efficiently and effectively, we want to control our environment, and controlling our environment means generating our own utilities. So that doesn't mean to say that something is bad. That just means to say it's keeping our environment clear. We understand what we're doing, and we therefore understand how we can control it and better it.
Fantastic. And I think that's a fantastic segue to Dina, because I was in conversation, we talked about circa 80% of the buildings in Expo will become District 2020, which is a fantastic legacy. And I told you my personal experience with Expo 98 in Portugal and how transformative that was to the city. In your view, obviously this is a tremendous legacy that the team will be extremely proud. What technologies are you putting in place that will have the biggest potential or excite you more, or you see being more transformative to the space in years to come?
So obviously, we're working with DIWA and the smart technologies that they have, the 5G networks that are going to be there, with the Etisalat, and also we're working very closely with Siemens, with MindSphere, to not only collect the data, because data is great, but analyzing the data and making sure that you have the capabilities to project what is going to happen through that data is very important. One of the things that we're doing also with Siemens through the MindSphere is visualizing the data, explaining the data to the visitors and also to the future inhabitants, of course, of the district. So that's just some of the things that we're doing within the space and within those within the 80% of the space that's actually staying. But that is not just for the 80%; it's for all of Expo itself. So we're working with the international participants. We're working with other commercial partners to ensure that there's an integrative property to the entire site. So the entire site is not only living and breathing together, but visualized in that way. And the visitor has the capability to see that this building is a LEED certified building, because what does that mean to the visitor? At the end of the day, building is a building. But then how do you visually show that it actually saves water and saves energy and so on and so forth? It has lower embodied carbon. It was built in a way that reduces the emissions. So how do you show all of that? So we're working with Siemens, we're working with MindSphere, we're working with our different internal teams to make sure that we have the capabilities to transform the site into something that the visitor can understand and can actually have some takeaways when they leave the site as well.
Understood. And I remember we were discussing what the future is going to look like, and in passing in common, you said, well, it depends up to the user. It's also very dependent on the users, because we're collecting this data, and this data will then help us shape the future. Can you expand a bit on that? So how do you see this working? How this symbiosis relationship working between the users and the space they occupy?
So I'll give you an example. I mean, when we talk about accessibility, for example, I mean, if you're talking about a building has to embody the inhabitants of who's living there, but it also has to cater to that. So when we're talking about data, we're collecting data, and we understand that the demographics of the place that a building is in, and I'm talking generally about a building, not just about Expo. The data has to be able to take into account the demographics of who's living there. So, for example, if we have to take into account accessibility, we have to take into account people of determination, and we have to be able to then almost tweak. If we have a building that is accessible, is of course Dubai design, based on the Dubai Design Code, and it's approved and all of that, but that at the end of the day, that's not enough. There's certain things that you can do that takes this a little bit further. I mean, we've done this at Expo, where we've looked at the demographics of the people who might be coming in, taking into account people of determination. We realize that people on the autism spectrum, for example, will require quiet rooms. So within the Expo, there are quiet rooms. And those quiet rooms came from the fact that we understood the data of the people who are coming to visit. And the quiet room is a space that you can go in and you can desensitize and you can just relax. The other things that we're taking into account, of course, is the capability to recycle. I mean, we talked about this, the problem I had operations. So for me, operations is very important. So how do we understand the data? How do we do some modeling around waste, which is what we're doing at the current moment, is the waste modeling, to understand how that waste is going to come in, how that waste is going to go out. Working with Dulsco, for example, one of our waste management partner at Expo. How do we understand the packaging that's coming into the Expo and that will be thrown in the bin and then taken out, and how will that be recycled or repurposed or used? So it starts from the very beginning. And looking at the waste modeling of that, not only is important to the building of the future, but also is important to the inhabitants who are living there and who would understand how that serves them better.
Understood. And I take your point is when data in itself is not necessarily meaningless, but you need to analyze that data you start seeing patterns and you start seeing answers and you start making your decisions based on concrete information. Thank you very much for that. Simon, again, with the items of data and managing information, and also this push to this digitalization, which I can't even say the word, I need to practice it up.
It's okay. I can't say it in Arabic. So
That's a difficult thing. Can we draw parallelisms between your IBMS system and a digital twin, but of both the buildings and the region? And we talked about the pressures of cost, and obviously the capabilities exist, but they're still quite, to have a truly digital twin can be expensive. So where do you see the sweet spot, and how do you see the sweet spot that exists now moving towards in the future?
Well, it's a little bit difficult because every project is very, very different. I've been lucky enough in my career to do mega programs, and mega programs have a different economy. So here in the Red Sea, a digital twin is an extremely important part of our world because, as I said, the environmental element is very, very strong, keeping the flora, fauna, and the sea life and the coral reef and improving it from what we took it to be. So that's pretty important for environmental simulation, looking at the impact of further development in the archipelago or further development in the land section. So for us, a digital twin has lots of different uses. It includes obviously overlaying command and control IBMS equipment onto there. It looks at the tourism aspect, so people can get to see the destination in full rendered 3D before they come to see us. So for us, it's big. It's an important part. It's a critical part of what we're doing. But for somebody building a 20-story building in Dubai or in downtown Riyadh, looking at the cost of creating a digital twin, it's at the moment, even though the technology is there, it's probably not quite there in regards to, has it got a cost benefit? When you start to build it out, I'm in an area called Digital City here in Riyadh. So that's about a 20-30 building park. So it starts to become more cost effective as you find more uses for it, simulation, overlay, constructability of a new section. So it does have a reasoning. A lot of the time on mega programs, it tends to be for marketing. My first play in digital twin was London 2012, where we did it for working out planning permissions for the different buildings as they came up. And then we used it as a marketing tool to be on the BBC and international news stories. So
it's also very important, isn't it? Because showcasing what all these technologies can do also brings more appetite for others to do the same. And as more people embrace technology, there's more utilization, there's more service providers, costs are driven down, all these sort of things. Because I think we would all agree that the digital twin will be a great thing once it becomes ubiquitous. It's just the cost of the technology can still be seen as a barrier to a lot of projects.
It's a collection, to be honest, Pedro. It's not the cost of the rendering engine. It's not the cost of all of that, because we just had the new Sony PlayStation and the Xbox drop, and those, even the new iPhone or the Samsung phones are unbelievable rendering engines. So all the technology is there. It's actually collecting that information, and particularly in our region, most of that information in BIM goes to LED 300, 350. It doesn't creep up to the higher levels which you would need to take that data and form a digital twin. You don't normally do videography or taking pictures from drones. So all of that data capture to create a digital twin is the thing that takes time, and it's that hasn't got cheaper. The world of the rendering engine, the world of the compute power to play on the rendering engine has got ridiculously cheaper, and it's in our hands now. But the surveying, the data capture hasn't. Understood.
And as you say, the LED 300 and the way the relationship between, what I hear you say is the relationship between the consultants and the contractors, and how that information, that digital information is carried through from design to construction to operation, is absolutely critical. to make sure that.
I remember a project. My first project here in the region, and it wasn't our project. I went to see it. It had a wonderful BIM manager, fantastic BIM process. They were collecting at LED 500. It was amazing, and I went to see the head of operations for that company. Told him, "Congratulations, you're leading the way." And he said, "What is BIM?"
Oh no.
So he had no understanding. He signed the checks. That's all he did. Some very
he signed the right checks. There's a merit on that, isn't it? He signed the right checks.
So you know, that we're not there. We're there luckily now, but in reality, it's still a way to go for the data collection at least. Understood.
I think for Dina, the fifth question on the agenda. We're talking a lot on buildings and what buildings need to do and need to happen or should happen or what the benefits. But also very interesting element of the lived environment is obviously the people. And in discussion, we talked about nudge technologies, which for me is delicious because I'm a big user of sending the gentle nudge email to people when things get a bit awry. So can you elaborate a bit more on nudge technologies and how they play an important part on the buildings and cities and the intelligent buildings and in the context of intelligent buildings?
So nudge technologies is something new and something that definitely we're exploring, and we're looking at different ways of utilizing it. And that's the way to influence the visitor or the inhabitant to do the right thing. And one of the things that we have on site, and we will be having on site when the doors open, is recycling. And I talked about this before. So we're going to have 3 streams of recycling. We're going to have smart bins that have solar compacting capabilities and have the capability to even speak to the speak to the visitor in some way. And we're working with our waste management partner, Delfco, on this. But then how do you get the person to actually throw the cup in the right bin? And that's what nudge is all about. It's looking at ways to make that person do the right thing. And the different applications to nudge technology. And nudge technology is quite new, and it's a mix between technology and almost psychological marketing, so to speak, in order for people to do the right thing. And that's something that we are looking at to see if it works with our, especially with our waste management. I mean, we have a waste diversion rate of 85% minimum from landfill. Last year, we were able to, by the end of 2019, we were able to divert 92% of that waste. As we move towards more of an event phase, we're going to see that waste, the waste types change. So we're moving away more from construction waste all the way through to operational waste, and that includes cups and lids and things like this. Although we've mandated biodegradable and compostable products because we have the capability to treat those, what we see is there's still contamination. So how do you work through that waste modeling that I was talking about, and through different technologies such as nudge technology, to help the visitor or to help the person make the right decisions on where to even throw their waste. So nudge technology has also been used on a number of things. You see it used to assist people to understand in the accessibility world. You see it also from an educational perspective. For example, Simon was talking about the coral reefs. Not a lot of people understand what that's all about, and you see nudge technology being used to help people, to help them drive their thinking in the right direction. And so that's what we're trying to do at Expo. We're trying to understand how we can utilize different technologies, how we can utilize data modeling even down to the recycling process and how do you impact the visitor to do better. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, it's fantastic. It was just, for me, it's amazing because it brings the other, the dimension of our clients or our users. I don't like to call them users, but yeah, the users, isn't it? And how the users interact and how we can explain better how we wish the environment, the waste, the public tracks, the buildings, the toilets, all these sort of things coming together. And I can see all my favorite science fiction films coming together, the ones that end up in everything being well and okay. Simon, one question. I think in conversation we talked about the user as well and the last mile, not in transportation, but in the last mile in terms of the person that needs to do something, or because machines will measure or provide data, but a lot of it, or a lot of the operations are still done by, or decisions are still done by humans. And we talked about that sometimes, although computers give you a very interesting picture of what's happening, is you still require a human brain and a human operator to make the right decision. Do you see this nudge technology to a certain extent? We also talked that buildings could operate themselves, isn't it? Tell me, what's your view on this, on nudge and self-operating buildings in the context of intelligent buildings?
Yeah, and buildings, like I said in previous conversation, technology has advanced to such an extent that buildings can absolutely run themselves. We have weather stations here in the Red Sea, and also those weather stations are looking at the silica buildup, the wind. The building itself can will shut effectively the natural air, the free air coming in, to make sure that there isn't silica or dust in the air. Not a big issue in the Red Sea, I have to say, because like in Riyadh, because we obviously have the sea, but we can do all that. The building itself can learn, can understand, can use machine learning, even AI, to start to understand what to do. The thing is that all around the world, this isn't a regional problem. People don't like the machine to do it. So they would like the machine to tell them what's going on, so they can go with their hammer and their tools to go and fix it. So you can have the most intelligent building. I think I was giving you an example of a building here in the Middle East where it was unbelievably intelligent, wonderful building, gave the operator everything they needed. I actually lived in it. And the jacuzzi broke. All that was wrong was an outdoor switch. The jacuzzi was pulled apart and the outdoor switch was replaced after 1 month. So you can have the most intelligent, fantastic building, but it comes to the operator in the end. Have they made the right decision? Are they trained properly? Do they know what all of this information is actually telling them? So if that isn't there, then all of the money in the world is not going to make a good, sustainable building.
You've raised a very interesting point. The people still like to do it. There's this mistrust on the machine. I remember I worked in a prison that all the cells were electronically controlled, and we had all this fantastic system. And the operator still said, "I still want a big key that is mine, and that allows me to go in and close things." So, and I think there's this suspicion, this natural suspicion of us with regards to all this intelligence, and some of it comes from our relationship with movies and books and science fiction. But do you think this will change as technology becomes more prevalent? Will our children just look at us and say, "Daddy, why were you so suspicious of self-driving cars? They are obviously the right thing, and they reduced death rates by 1,000. Why do you still want to drive your own car?" Where is it with us in that fascination? Do you have any thoughts of your on that?
I think my son is going to say, "Why don't you like a self-driving car?" Because I can watch YouTube in the back and the car will drive itself. So I think that's more of his explanation to me, Pedro. But I think it just, technology that itself goes far quicker than the human can take. So let technology ride ahead of us. It always has, it always will. and the human being will effectively slowly, gain its trust and start to actually understand it. My background is manufacturing, and computers in manufacturing were mistrusted. Now a Tesla factory works entirely off computers, but even that, I mean, the first Tesla factory manufacturing Tesla cars was totally robotic, completely robotic, and it was unbelievably slow. They had a huge problem producing Tesla cars with the first batch, and that was because the human being still is important. And actually they went from 100% robotic and autonomous production to about 80%. And they included the human being where a human being is worthwhile. So I always think that there is technology can do it. It can produce, hundreds of Tesla cars a day, but it still isn't unbelievably intelligent to catch with a human being and have the human being's brain. So I just think technology always rides ahead of us. We always ride to catch up with it. So that it's just a bit of a delay, that's all. In the construction world, it's a lot more of a delay. But even the construction world is slowly catching up.
Understood. Dina, do you have any thoughts on this from a context of Expo? Obviously, it's in a certain way your mandate to expose people to change and to. Do you think it will play an important role of people thinking, actually the nudge technology was so interesting and it made me do the right thing. This should be more prevalent in our cities. What of educating people and educating future mega developments in the region? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's what expos are all about at the end of the day. I mean, you look at expos historically, and they've always brought something that is a little further ahead than what's available right now. So, and it's not just going to be what Expo is going to bring, it's going to be what the other countries are going to bring, the other 190 countries that are coming in with all of their different technologies, with everything from, autonomous vehicles, as Simon was saying, to looking at ways of designs and buildings. I had a panel I was moderating a few weeks back during our Climate and Biodiversity Week, and we had some of the architects of some of the pavilions, and I was just absolutely blown away by not just the technology, but by the thought process behind the designs that were coming out of these pavilions. So I think expos have always been at the forefront of bringing new things. It was the first time an X-ray was presented was at an expo in New York, and so on and so forth. The first time lights were at the World's Fair in Chicago, and so on. So if you see what Expo stands for, it's always about something new and some new technology. And I think that's what we're going to see. On top of that, we have our Expo Live grantees, where we were granting funds for new innovations. And some of the things that they were bringing in, and I've sat in some of the meetings with the Expo Live team, it's absolutely astounding. The technologies and the interesting things that they're bringing. Things like My Eyes, where somebody somewhere else can help a blind person navigate the streets, but they're somewhere else in the world. And so how does that technology work, and how you bring all of these things together? Capabilities to reduce carbon footprint through an app. All kinds of things that are there to make the world better, and that can be seen at Expo and can be brought to life and are happening here and now. I mean, when you talk about your kids saying, well, autonomous cars, our kids are already saying that. My kids are already saying that anyway. It's get with the program. So that's my take on it.
A fair point. Go with the program. I like it. The program, as long as it's managed by people like you, Dina, and Simon, I'm sure will take us to fantastic places. So thank you very much for your time. We have obviously, I think on our side, after the closing remarks. My first closing remarks is thank you very much for being here. Your projects are definitely super important and transformative towards their scale and their ambitions. And Simon, from you to say, we don't want to be connected because we want to control everything, because our mandate is to do something truly special from an environment perspective, gives me hope that there'll be coral reefs for our children's children to visit, which is fantastic. And Dina, your passion and the passion of Expo 2020, which unfortunately had to be delayed. My son was absolutely gutted when he understood that COVID was this issue is postponing. I think everyone is very, very excited. And every time I drive very close by and I look at that building, look at that. We're very, very keen to see it happening and coming into conclusion, which would be lovely in this massive party. So I think that's it for us. Thank you. We now can have, we'll be open for questions. So if anyone in the audience have any questions for Dina or Simon, please bring them forward and we'll cater for them as soon as we can.
And what a dynamic conversation. They're intelligent buildings and their impact for the future. So really, really exciting to listen to the Red Sea Development Company, Expo 2020, and BuroHappold Engineering there, Simon, Dina, and of course that great moderation. Pedro, thank you so much also for moderating that panel. Stay with us here. We want to bring you in on this conversation as well. And Simon, if I might start with you, when we look at intelligent buildings, are they really the foundation for smart precincts, cities, communities, and particularly when we look at the great work that you're going to be doing for a completely new build? What a great spec to get in terms of the Red Sea development. It's all going to be extremely intelligent, I would imagine. Tell me more.
Yes, certainly. As I said before, we have a vast, huge area the size of Belgium. So our problem is slightly different. Cities themselves have a vast amount of buildings, probably some 20 stories high, very closely knit together. They obviously have to know what's happening within maybe a group of buildings that are at a campus. We've got a slightly different problem. Our buildings are ground floor plus one, ground floor plus two, but spread across a great area. So for us, our main focus is to try and make sure that the energy consumption is going okay, because we generate our own energy, as I said, and to ensure that we are looking at light pollution very seriously. We're actually a dark sky initiative certified, will be a dark sky certified development, which means we have to put very, very minimal light up. So all of our IBMS or intelligent building controls are just looking to see what's happening, and also making sure we do predictive maintenance, because actually it's not just a walk away. Some of our buildings are a helicopter ride away. So we obviously have to get out there with the right tools and fix it in the right way.
Now, Dina, we talked already with Expo 2020, and we're so excited to see the plans, and we saw the wonderful video and really looking at how this has unfolded. We've got a few questions coming in, so I want to go straight to some of our audience questions because I want to make sure they're involved and they're getting their answers. One of the questions that they have asked actually, are green rated buildings intelligent buildings, or are intelligent buildings actually more technologically advanced, so to speak? And are they a combination of green and technology? I think sometimes people don't quite understand, what the difference is, or which is, it's not which is better than the other, but which is which, so to speak. Dina.
Thank you. I think it's a combination of both. Green buildings and intelligent buildings, they're kind of synonymous with each other. A green building takes the concept of passive design as well as the technology. And I don't think you can separate the two at this day and age. You can't just have the technology without the green, or the green without the technology. I think that that in order for you to have something like what Simon was saying, predictive, and the fact that he was talking about dark sky certified, and so on and so forth, they have to have that technology aspect. And in order for us to have a truly green building that integrates passive design, that looks at the energy consumption, water consumption, that also looks at light pollution, it looks at air quality, and so on and so forth, you have to have the technology aspect integrated in it. So to me, I think it's a combination of both. I hope that answers the question.
Stay with me for a minute on this as we look directly at what's going on at Expo. And I mean,
yes,
incredibly technology-driven, smart buildings, intelligent buildings. The world is going to see something very, very special when this opens next October. So perhaps you'll give us a little bit of a sneak preview when we think about how intelligent these buildings are.
Absolutely. I mean, we have over 120 LEED certified buildings, gold and above, and that means a lot. But layered onto that is our connection with MindSphere and with our partners such as Siemens to ensure that we actually showcase the way these buildings operate. They live and breathe, how the movement of the energy, the water consumption, the emissions, and so on and so forth. So visualizing that, because our visitor needs to also understand that these buildings, they're efficient, they're smart, but at the same time, if you walk by a building, you really don't know if this building is a smart building or not a smart building if you're just an average person. So how do you bring those buildings to life? You bring them to life through technology, through visualization, and utilizing MindSphere, utilizing our partners' capabilities to bring those buildings to life. You see the sustainability pavilion, and I think probably my colleague Ahmed Al-Khatib showcased some of those buildings and the vast amount of technological advances just within that pavilion, but also showcased the minute details that the Expo has gone into in order to integrate technology into the green designs that we have on site. So I hope that answers the question.
We're looking forward to seeing that. I think it is. It's something that everybody in Dubai and indeed around the world, as we want to showcase Expo, is going to be very, very excited about. Pedro, let me bring you in here. And obviously, not all buildings are maybe green or intelligent at the moment. But let's have a look at, legacy buildings, legacy equipment and assets. How do we bring them to operate within the new digital, IoT world? Because they have to be able to be, updated, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I think as the cost of technology drops, the benefits outweigh the costs quite significantly. I would argue that that's already the case now, and it's been the case for quite some time. There's the region, a lot of the assets built in the region are reaching that point, 15, 20, 25 years old, and they're starting there's a lot of benefits in looking at the buildings from a different perspective. Our team, probably the team that had more work and grew quicker, was the asset consultancy team, because there's a lot of value added to understanding why is my building using so much energy? Why do I have these issues with humidity? Why is foundations behaving in this way? And I think intelligent buildings and the technologies behind intelligent buildings and the nudge technology showcased by Dina in Expo, all of this has a very important part to play with our relationship with existing buildings. An existing 20-story office might become something else. And what should it become? Why should it become it in that way? All of that should be informed, or it is likely to be closer to what we need if it's informed by technology and by the information available.
Now, Simon, I have a question for you here. Do you have classification levels for IoT, smart cities, and smart buildings? Do we have standards yet, or are they under development? A question that has just come in, so I'm not sure if they're talking about international standards or just particularly for what you're building.
So a little bit. I mean, each country, I would say smart buildings effectively are built around things that you need to do. Operational SLAs, operational standard operating practices, KPIs around energy. I wouldn't say that there is per se a standard of implementing an intelligent building or an IBMS. Manufacturers like Honeywell, Siemens, others probably have their own way of implementing, but they're normally built around things like ourselves in the Red Sea. We build intelligent buildings around checking the utility consumption because we're generating our own utility, water, electric, etc. So we're very keen on that, and we're very keen on making sure that we are looking at the dark sky and the emissions to the dark sky, as I said. So we have a set of KPIs. I'm sure Dina obviously has a set of KPIs, and others would too. Very different to each project, very different to each city. So they're mainly built around that, to be honest.
And I suppose too, in many ways, it's a process of evolution, because it's not the norm everywhere at the moment. It will, of course, become the norm. And I think when we're going to step into Expo and when we're going to go visit the Red Sea Development Company, yes, it will be the norm then. But at the moment, when we walk around the streets, Pedro, particularly right now, it's not specifically the norm. One of the other questions I got, Pedro, I'd like to put it to you. What is the need for building and warehouse automation to be fully integrated rather than just interconnected? What's the difference there?
I think there's it boils down to what you want to get out of the data. And if you just have some sensor here, a sensor there, and you're only looking at the information provided, that information can be perceived as noise because it's difficult to interpret. So if you have a case study, I think Dina put this very interesting point of there is a need for quiet rooms. It's identifying what you want to do. You want to do the next office, or you want to do the next shopping mall. What is it? What are the metrics that are important to you? What are the KPIs? And what information do you require, or technology do you require to ensure that you meet those metrics? So I think there's a lot of face value intelligent buildings, as in I will have 10 sensors and therefore the building is intelligent or smart. And that's not the case. A lot of the smartness of the intelligent buildings comes behind the curtain, where all that data is analyzed, is then transformed into information, and then information is transformed into decisions. So it's more to do with what's behind the data that we collect.
Now, Dina, I have a question here, and I think it's something that you can probably work into the waste modeling and the data modeling and all of that. And the question particularly around connected appliances with building services, looking at solutions, but again, integration being the issue. And how practical is it to associate with the manufacturer at the early stages of the projects? I would imagine it's very, very important to do that. And the viewer asks, does that call for any legal or contractual conflicts? But surely it's about starting at the very beginning before you put everything in place. What do you think?
So yes, I understand the contractual issues, but at the end of the day, we have a proper process in order to do that. The connectivity is very important, understanding and tailoring the requirements for our site, and not just our site. We're not just looking at a site as a whole, but we're looking at tailoring the requirements building by building. And so to me, I think it's not about the contractual requirements. We have contractual requirements. They are in place, but also what are the needs and what are we trying to achieve? 80% of our site is permanent. It will stay. So there has to be this connectivity from the beginning, from the minute that you have the idea and the design and put the process in place. You have to understand the connectivity of it. So I think I answered the question. I hope I did.
Yes, indeed. And also I think in part of working with the manufacturers, in terms of no matter what it is you're doing, working with everybody at an early time, and you really talk about the partners that you have in place and how important they are to bring it to life, really.
Exactly. But also I think the most important thing, and I think Simon touched upon that and Pedro touched upon that, it is the customization of what we need to achieve and the prioritization of what we need to achieve. The mechanical and the technology, all of it comes together, but it comes within the prioritization and the customization of what we are trying to achieve.
Simon, we only have a few minutes left on this, but perhaps you might address part of a question here, but also I'll combine it with another one. Looking at the concept of architectural robotics, transformable living spaces in your projects to create more efficient spaces in buildings, and also the concept of perhaps sensor technology, digital twins. I mean, in terms of how you're actually building right now and hoping to get to where it is. How have these tools, I suppose, impacted what you're doing?
Certainly answer the second. I can answer both, but the second is probably more relevant to our development in the Red Sea. So we are building a digital twin. I think I discussed it a little bit in the session. The digital twin is very important to us because we're a tourist destination. So we have to show and explain both actually on the land and under the sea, because most of our jewels are actually the coral reefs and things you can't see unless you're in a diving suit. So a digital twin is very important to us, both in kind of a explanation of what's happening in our destination, plus also we've got thousands of environmental sensors that are monitoring the health of the entire area. So the twin is a kind of indication of where we started, where we are now, where we want to go. So for us, it also lives in the buildings, and we can show and demonstrate what's happening with the buildings on the digital twin. But it is a pretty important thing. It's a very expensive thing to do. So you've got to have your standard operating practices, your KPIs that enforce a digital twin and would be sitting quite happily with a digital twin. On the second one, which is adaptable or robotic spaces, I think that's definitely more of a city thing. We may be vast, but we're vast and spread apart. I think it is becoming, as cities really start to go bigger, it is becoming a huge thing, but probably more cost prohibitive.
Yes, indeed. And that's something everybody will be looking at, needs to look at, because ultimately it is about making sure you deliver a good project, you deliver on time, on budget, and that it's a good environment. We have to leave it there. I'm so sorry. So many exciting projects here going on. And I want to thank Dina and Simon and also Pedro. I know you're working on other exciting projects we didn't have time to talk about. But rest assured we will be back with the Big Five Festival in person next year. We'll have to continue and get updates on all of these fascinating projects because they really are great. So I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much.